The run sheet went up on the practice room wall at 9 in the morning, and my own engagement was on it, line 11. Squeezed between a cosmetics red and a commercial break. March 14, Liv, Limyasol, Miss Universe engagement segment, 8 min and groom, agency staff, vocal trainer, name TBC. Name to be confirmed. That was me. I had been engaged for exactly as long as it took to read a sheet of A4 paper, and nobody in the building thought that was worth a phone call. 8 minutes. They gave the shampoo sponsor 12. Mi Suk from styling found me under the sheet with a swatch ring in her hand, and that soft voice people use on dogs and staff. Woo Jin ah, about the 14th, we're going back to black, obviously. My hair is green, has been since I was 19. Not neon, not manhwa green, the dark tired green of a bottle you find in a river, grown out at the roots because a box dye costs 8,000 won and I had better places to lose 8,000 won. No, I said. She laughed, because that wasn't an answer she'd ever received in this building. Sorry? I said no, keep it. Yisel asked personally. Then it'll be a nice surprise for her. I went back to the ironing board. Behind me, Misuk stood there holding the swatch ring like a woman waiting for the punchline, and when it didn't come, she went to find someone with more rank. Here's the thing about that hair. The last time I lived through March, I dyed it. Sat in a chair for 3 hours the night before. Came out with my scalp burning and my head the exact black of a rental car. And Yesol looked at me on camera and said I finally looked like someone she could stand next to. 14 months after that, I was in a bed at Sinchon with a plastic bracelet on my wrist and a pen somebody had to fold into my fingers, signing away the rights to every arrangement I'd ever written for her. And the last thing I saw before the ceiling was Chan Woo Ko checking his watch. So no, the hair stays. I burned my thumb on the iron and swore, and that was the first thing in this second life that felt like proof. Pain has a texture. Memories don't. 14 months. That was the gap between the run sheet on the wall and the ceiling of that hospital room. I had 14 months and a salary of 2.4 million, won a month and a laundry cart, and everyone in that building had already decided who I was going to be for the rest of my life. They were about to be very wrong, very publicly, and on a schedule. By 10, the dorm was awake and the noise started, which in a trainee dorm means 14 girls, 3 hair dryers, 1 shower with pressure and 1 without, and somebody's alarm going off in a room nobody would admit to owning. I ran vocals in practice room B from 10 to 1. 6 trainees, breathwork, the boring stuff nobody films. Trainee number 14, Haon, the one from Gwangju with the accent they kept telling her to file down, kept clipping the ends of her phrases because she was scared of taking up air. I put my hand flat on the wall behind her and told her to push me off it. She couldn't. That's the point of the exercise. At 1, the floor manager stuck his head in and said the fitting was moved up and I needed to bring the ironed shirts to the 9th floor. Nobody in No Line had ever said please to me. Consistency is a kind of honesty. The 9th floor is where the money lives. Carpet instead of lino, a coffee machine that grinds beans, a wall of framed magazine covers with our girl on 11 of them and climbing. I came out of the service lift with 14 shirts on a rail and a cart, and the whole floor looked at the cart, not at me, which is the correct way to look at a cart. Giselle was on the sofa with her feet up, phone in hand, being photographed for something. She'd taken the crown 3 weeks earlier in Bangkok, and the country had not shut up about it since. Sponsors were stacked outside the door like planes over Incheon. She saw the hair before she saw me. Her thumb stopped. You didn't do it. Not yet. The 14th is in 5 weeks. It is. She smiled for the camera in the corner, held it 3 seconds, and let it go the second the shutter stopped. That was always the tell with her. Everyone talks about her face. Nobody watches how fast she puts it away. Come here, she said, patting the sofa. Sit. Cart's blocking the door. Woo Jin. I stayed by the cart. She waited a beat, decided this was a mood rather than a change, and went warm. She's excellent at warm. She learned it from tapes, and she practices it like scales. You know how this works? She said. 8 minutes on national television? Do you know what an 8-minute segment costs? People would take out a loan for that, then sell it to them. You're being weird. I'm being ironed. She laughed. Real laugh, even. That's the part that would have gutted me last time. She actually liked me. The way you like a coat that fits. Ko came in then with 2 phones, and the smile of a man who has never once been told no by anyone under 30. Chan Woo Ko, senior manager, 5 years in a job that eats people in 2, sunglasses on his head indoors, walking like the floor had personally been laid for him. Shirts, he said to the shirts. 9th floor, I said, to the ceiling. He looked up at the hair, registered it, filed it. Fix that before the 14th. He's decided he likes it, Yesol said, in the voice you use to make a man sound 5 years old in front of another man. He'll fix it, Ko said. And that was the end of my opinion as far as the room was concerned. I pushed the cart out. Behind me, I heard her ask him if the Japanese distribution people had confirmed, and I heard him say Thursday, and I filed that away, because in 14 months I had learned exactly one useful thing about Thursday. In the lift, I stood with my forehead against the cold steel and did the arithmetic I'd been doing since I woke up in the wrong year. 7 years. That's what I gave her before any of this. I was 19 and teaching evening classes in a basement in Noan when she walked in with 110,001 in an envelope and a voice like a squeaky door. She couldn't hold a note through a whole bar. She couldn't stand still without swaying. She had a face that made the room rearrange itself and absolutely nothing behind it yet, and she worked like she was being chased. I fixed the breathing. Then the diction, because her vowels flattened when she got nervous and it read as bored on camera. Then the walk, because she came up on her toes when she was scared and it made her look like she was apologizing for her own height. I wrote her audition arrangements. I sat in on her contract meeting when she was 20 and too green to notice the clause about image rights. And I'm the one who made them strike it. Her first pageant, the regional, the one that got her in the door, cost $4 million in entry fees. Gown, coaching, travel, and a photographer who took the country's opinion of her from nothing to something. I paid it, all of it. I sold my grandfather's workshop. He'd been a seal carver. Not the tourist kind. The kind that got called when a bank changed its name and needed a stamp that couldn't be faked, back when a company's seal was its face. 2 rooms in Yulgiro with the smell of boxwood and machine oil, a lathe older than my father, and drawers of impressions on rice paper going back to the 70s. He died when I was 22 and left it to me because I was the only one who ever sat in there and shut up. I got 31 million won for the building rights and the tools. A man in a windbreaker counted it out in a coffee shop and asked me twice if I was sure, which should have told me something. 4 of that went into her entry. The rest went into her the way water goes into sand. I never told her what it was. I told her it was savings. She never asked, which at the time I read as trust. Then Bangkok, then the crown, then the schedule, the sponsors, the floor with the carpet, and me still on 2.4 a month teaching breath control to 17-year-olds because Ko said moving me up would confuse the org chart. Then the engagement, on television, with my hair the color of a rental car. Then the year after, which is the part I don't get to describe as a bad year because a bad year is when things go badly. What happened to me had a work order. It started with my hands, a tremor in the left, then both, then the flutter in my chest at 3 in the morning that made me sit up in the dark like a man who'd forgotten something. I have a heart thing, congenital, boring, entirely manageable with a capsule twice a day for the rest of my life. The agency's clinic filled the prescription. It was a perk. They took it out of my pay and everything. 9 months in, I stopped being able to demonstrate a phrase without my voice shaking. They moved me off vocals, then off staff, then into a room at Sinjon where a doctor with a nice tie told me it was stress, and then chronic stress, and then that some hearts just do this, and I believed every word. Because I was tired in a way that ate arguments. The capsules in my bottle at the end were sugar and chalk. I know because I bit one open at 4 in the morning out of pure spite, and it tasted like nothing at all, I told the nurse. She wrote it down. Nobody came. They needed my signature on the arrangement rights before I got too shaky to hold a pen, and they got it. Ko held the clipboard. His soul stood in the doorway in a camel coat because the corridor was cold, and she said, "It's just paperwork, Opa." And then she fixed her lipstick in the black of the window while I signed my own name badly. That's all. That's the entire tragedy. There's no big scene at the end of it. I just went quiet in a room where somebody was checking the time. The lift doors opened on the 2nd floor, and a kid from wardrobe got in with an armful of shoeboxes and said hi and asked if the cart was going down. It was. I said so. He got out on the ground floor, and I stood there for another 11 seconds because my hands had decided to shake in this life out of habit. Then they stopped. That's the difference, I told myself. Last time my hands shook and I didn't know why. There's a thing people get wrong about coming back. They think it's a superpower. It isn't. It's a schedule. I didn't wake up with money or muscles or a system voice in my head telling me I'd unlocked something. I woke up on the floor of a dorm supply room on a Tuesday in January with a crick in my neck. 14 months of my life queued up in my head like a run sheet, and the exact same 2.4 million won a month. What I had was every date. I know the day the one slips against the yen. I know which Thursday the Japanese distributor walks out of a meeting on the 9th floor, and which Thursday they come back. I know that on the 9th of June, a mid-size cosmetics label announces a merger nobody sees coming because I sat through Ko screaming about it in a corridor. I know that in October, a boy band with a stupid name posts numbers that reprice half the industry. And I know which of those things are worth money to a man with nothing to invest. Almost none of them, if you're honest. That's the part nobody tells you. Foreknowledge without capital is just a very detailed way to be poor. But it isn't nothing. I sat down on an upturned crate in the laundry room with a notebook I'd stolen from the supply cupboard, and I wrote down every date I could still see clearly in order before it started to blur. 51 entries. I checked the first 3 against the news on my phone. Number 1, a cargo strike at Busan on the 23rd. On the 23rd, there was a cargo strike at Busan. Number 2, our own building's lift, the middle one, out of service for 4 days in February. It went out on a Sunday, 4 days. Number 3 was Ko's stupid car. A red thing he leased for more than my annual salary, keyed down one side in the garage by somebody who was never caught. I remembered the date because he made all the staff give statements. I went down to the garage on the morning of the 29th to check. There it was, one long silver line, front wheel arched to rear door, and Ko crouched in front of it, with his hand over his mouth like a man at a wake. I stood behind a pillar, and I want to be clear about what I felt, because it wasn't triumph. It was relief. Cold all the way down. I wasn't crazy. It was all going to happen exactly the way I remembered, right up until I changed it. I went for a swim after that. Not a health thing. There's a public pool 6 stops from the dorm, built in the 80s, tiles the color of dentist's mouthwash, and it costs 3,001 before 8 in the morning. I've gone 4 mornings a week since I was 24, because it's the only hour of the day nobody can hand me anything. The old guy on the desk looked at my hair, then at my arm, and made me show him my card twice. The tattoo does that to people. It's on my left forearm, inside, wrist to elbow. Not a dragon, not a script, not a girl's name. It's a square. Inside the square, 4 characters and a border pattern of interlocking hooks, cut in the reverse, the way it sits on the face of a seal, backwards, so it reads correctly only when it's pressed into ink. It's my grandfather's mark, the one he cut into every stamp that left his shop for 50 years. Small in the corner where nobody looks. I got it 2 weeks after he died. A guy in Hongdae did it off a photograph and asked me 3 times if I was sure I wanted it mirrored, because nobody's going to be able to read it. That was the point. Grandpa's rule, a mark that any fool can read, isn't protecting anything. Yi Sol hated it. She said it looked like a barcode. In the other life, I wore long sleeves to her events for 4 years, and I never once made her ask. I swam 800 meters badly and got out and stood under the shower with my forearm up in front of my face, water running off the hooks. Everything I had left in the world was on that arm, and I didn't know it yet. Not for another 11 weeks. The first time I said no where it cost money was a Tuesday in the writing room on the 7th floor. Yi Sol had a showcase coming. The crown comes with obligations, and one of them was a live stage in March, where she'd sing 8 bars, and everyone would agree she was multi-talented. She couldn't sing 8 bars. She could sing 4.5 if the key was kind, and the key had to be built for her the way a ramp is built for a wheelchair. I'd already built it. In the other life, I'd built it twice, because Ko changed the tempo after it was finished. So the arrangement, Ko said, feet on the table. Phone face down like that made him present. Same as always. You do it. We credit the in-house team. Everybody's happy. Sure, I said, same as always. Good man. With a paper this time, the room did that thing where 4 people find something on their screens. Ko took his feet off the table. A paper. 2 lines. Date. My name. The file name. What it's for. I sign it. You sign it. It goes in a drawer and nobody ever looks at it again. You've written arrangements here for 6 years. 7. Now suddenly you want a contract. Not a contract. A receipt. He laughed and looked around for company and got a bit. The junior producer laughed the way you laugh when your boss does. Ko leaned forward on his elbows and gave me the voice he uses on drivers. You know what you are here? Go on. Furniture. He let it sit. Good furniture. Nobody complains about the sofa. But the sofa doesn't ask for paperwork. That's fair, I said. He blinked. He'd loaded a second one and now he had nowhere to put it. That's fair, I said again, and put the sheet on the table with a pen on top of it, and I stood there in a stretched-out gray jumper with the sleeves pushed up and my arm on the table and just waited. Furniture waits beautifully. That's the whole skill of being furniture. 11 seconds. I counted. He signed it to end the moment. That's the thing about people like Ko, they'll trade anything for the room going back to normal, because the room going back to normal is where they live. I folded it and put it in my back pocket and went and taught a breathing class. In the other life, that arrangement, the one for the March showcase, the one built around a voice that can't hold a bar, got used for the album, the campaign, 2 commercials, and a game. Nobody could ever prove who wrote it, because there was never a piece of paper with a date on it. Now there was. 2 lines, in a drawer, with Chan Woo-ko's signature at the bottom. He'd remember that day. Later, when men in better suits than his started asking questions with dates in them, That Tuesday was going to be the first thing they pulled. Word got round the way it does. By Thursday, 3 people had asked me if something was going on at home. Yisol cornered me in the stairwell between 5 and 6, which was smart of her because the stairwell has no cameras and she knows exactly where all of them are. She'd come straight from a fitting and she was still in the heels, which put her at my eye level, and she stood 1 step up anyway. You embarrassed him. He signed a 2-line note. In front of the team. He put his feet on the table in front of the team. She breathed out through her nose. Then she reset. I actually watched her do it. The shoulders coming down, the chin softening, the whole warm thing sliding into place like a drawer. Appa, hand on my forearm on the tattoo which she never touched. Are you angry with me? No. You are. You've been strange since the run sheet. I found out I was engaged from a printer. That's just how scheduling. She stopped. Smiled. Restarted. That's not fair. I wanted to tell you at dinner. They put it up early. Do you know what I said to the producer when he asked who the groom was? No, I said. The only person who was there. She looked up at me. 6 years of practice in that look, and about 4 of them were mine. You were there, when I couldn't hold a note. When my mother wouldn't answer the phone. Nobody else was there. In the other life, I'd have folded right there in the stairwell. That's not a joke about being weak. She's genuinely good at it, and I was genuinely lonely, and the two of those things fit together like a hand in a glove for 7 years. This time, I heard the sentence structure. The only person who was there. Not the person I love, not the person I want, the one who was there, an availability claim, a logistics statement. She'd been telling me the truth for 7 years, and I'd been hearing music. I know, I said. I was. Her hand tightened, satisfied. Who's your doctor now, I asked. What? At the clinic? Downstairs. Who signs your prescriptions? Dr. Yu does everyone's. Sang-woo Yu. Why are you? Someone was asking about the flu shots. I moved past her down the stairs. Wear the flats to the fitting on Monday. The floor's marble and you come up on your toes when you're nervous. It reads on camera. I heard her heel come down on the step behind me, hard, and then nothing, because she never lets herself be heard losing. Sang-woo Yu, 44, in-house clinic. 6 years. Terrible tie collection. Signs everything. Questions nothing. In the other life, he'd sat on the end of my bed at Sinchon and told me hearts are strange and that I should try to lower my stress. And then he'd patted my knee. He didn't know it yet, but of the 4 names I'd written down, he was the soft one. Every operation has one guy who thought he was doing paperwork. The laundry in the basement of our building doesn't do coats or anything structured. For that, everyone in a 4-block radius goes to Haas, which is a night cleaner under the stairs on the corner, open 8 in the evening to 8 in the morning, because that's when this neighborhood is awake. Duk Soo Ha is 68 and does not care who you are. That is a rarer service in Gangnam than dry cleaning. I'd been going there since I moved into the dorm, first because it was cheap, then because he was the only person who talked to me like a man rather than a function. He'd worked 31 years for the police as a forensic examiner. Documents mostly, and fibers, and he retired the year his wife got sick and never went back. He had opinions about ironing that he would share whether or not you were still in the shop. Steam is a lie, he said that night, with my gray jumper over the board and a look of contempt on his face. Everybody wants steam. Steam relaxes it, and then it goes home and does whatever it likes. Pressure and patience. Pressure and patience. You should put that on the sign. I have a sign. He didn't look up. You're in here at 2 in the morning again. I like the company. You like being where nobody can hand you anything. He turned the jumper. Your hair's coming back green at the roots. It's supposed to be green. He glanced at me over the top of his glasses, and then, because he's a decent man and terrible at it, he said, They putting you on TV? 8 minutes? Long time, 8 minutes. You've no idea. I helped him haul the unclaimed rack out of the back. His knees are shot and he'd rather die than say so, and that's when I found the tickets, not the garments. The tickets. Keeps his book the way he was trained to keep evidence, a hardbound ledger, numbers running consecutively, item, time in, time out, name, no gaps, no pencil, and the counterfoil torn along the perforation and pinned to the garment itself. Half the rack was no-line staff. We're 200 meters away, and nobody in that building irons anything themselves. I flipped through the counterfoils on the unclaimed stuff the way you flick through a magazine in a waiting room. Suit jacket, charcoal, suit jacket, navy. A gown and a bag that must have been in there a year, and a counterfoil with 0340 written on it in Ha's square little hand. I looked at it for maybe 2 seconds and put it back, because at that point it meant nothing to me at all. A man dropped off a jacket at 20 to 4 in the morning. So what? This is an industry where people are awake at 20 to 4 for the dullest possible reasons. Do you keep these? I asked. The old ones, when someone never picks up. 7 years? 7? Tax. He shrugged. And because people lie. Man came in here in 99 and said I lost his coat. I had the ticket. He had nothing. Ha smoothed the collar down and hit it with the iron. Paper doesn't get tired, Wu Jin. That's the only good thing about paper. I stayed another hour. He made instant coffee in a cup that said Busan Marine Supply on it and told me about a case in 1994 where a whole insurance fraud came apart because of a laundry mark, and I laughed in the right places. And I did not yet understand that he had just handed me the single most dangerous object in this story, a book of numbers, in order, with times on them, kept by a man who does not lie and cannot be bought because nobody has ever thought to try. Walking back at 4 a.m. with my jumper over my shoulder, I did the thing I'd been avoiding for 3 weeks. I made the list. Not a revenge list. I want to be precise, because I've thought about this more than is healthy. A revenge list is a wish. You write it, you feel warm, you read it again at night, and it does absolutely nothing except make you worse company. What I wrote was a write-off list. The same thing a company keeps. The assets that are coming off the books, in order, with a method next to each one. There's no feeling in it. That's the whole point. 4 names. Sang-woo Yu, he signed the prescriptions. He's the softest, and he goes first. But not until I can put a date next to what he did, because a doctor with no paper against him just gets moved to a clinic in Bundang and keeps his license. Chan-woo Ko, the one who held the clipboard and checked his watch. The dangerous one because he's the only one of the 4 who is genuinely quick, which is exactly why I don't touch him. You don't fight a man like Ko. You give him room, time, and a slightly wrong piece of information, and he will build his own scaffold, climb up on it, and kick it out himself. Ko has never once in his life failed to open his mouth at the exact wrong moment. Byung-ho No, 61, founder. The man whose name is on the building, who does charity galas for orphan trainees, and once, on a panel show, said the industry's problem was that young people didn't want to sacrifice anymore. He's the one I know least about, and in a month I'd learned that I'd been sitting on the answer to him since I was 22. Ye Sol Lim. I sat with that 4th line for a long time on the steps outside the dorm, with the sky going gray over the convenience store. People want a big feeling here. There isn't one. That's the thing nobody warns you about coming back. You don't return full of fire. The fire burned in the first life, at 3 a.m, alone, and by the time it was over there wasn't anything left in the tank but arithmetic. I didn't want her to suffer. I wanted her to know the number, what it cost in one to make her, and who paid it, and what he was worth to her at the end, which was a camel coat in a cold corridor and the word Appa in a doorway. There's a 5th name on that page. I crossed it out the same night I wrote it, hard enough to go through to the next page, and then I wrote it again on the back where I could still see it. Because crossing something out isn't the same as deciding. Duke Su-ha, 68, shop on the corner. In the other life, when No Line refurbished the block in the spring, Ha's lease got bought and broken and the shop became a phone accessories place. And I heard he moved in with his son in Daejeon and died 18 months later. I didn't go to the funeral. I didn't know about it until 3 months after. I was busy being tired. He's not on the list to be removed. He's the one I keep. That's the difference between the 2 versions of me, if you want it in one line. The first one had nothing and lost everything anyway. This one has nothing and knows exactly what to spend it on. What I had, precisely, was 6,400,000 won in a savings account, a motorbike worth about 3 million if I found the right idiot, and 14 months. I found the idiot on a Saturday. A dentist's son in Ilsan who wanted a 400cc for the summer and paid 3.4 without arguing because I let him hear the engine before I told him the price. 9,800,000 won all in. Then I went shopping for garbage. Here's what nobody tells you about a company like No Line. It looks like a fortress from outside: the tower, the covers on the wall, the girls on the buses. Inside, it's held together with short-term paper. Every production company in this city runs on debt that gets rolled over the way a man rolls over a credit card. And when a supplier gets stiffed for 4 months, that supplier eventually sells the debt for whatever he can get to whoever will take it. Because a wholesaler who is owed 11 million and needs 6 today will take 6. Pawn shops and note dealers in Yeongdeung-po do this all day long. Nobody films it. There's a guy above a pool hall with a fax machine and a metal cabinet, and he will sell you another company's unpaid invoices at a discount that would make you dizzy, because collecting them is a nightmare, and nobody wants a court fight with a firm that has better lawyers than they do. I bought 9,800,000 won of No Line's garbage. Face value, a bit over 41 million, 2 lighting subcontractors, a bus company, a caterer, and a stage build company from a tour that lost money in 2019. The man with the fax machine counted my cash twice and asked what I was going to do with it. Nothing, I said truthfully. You know they don't pay. I know. He shrugged and gave me the file in a rubber band and told me not to come back crying. And I took a debt file worth nothing on the subway with my knees together, like an old woman with her handbag. Because here's the arithmetic that only works if you already know the ending. Right now, that paper is trash because no line is healthy and can ignore it forever. But an unpaid invoice is not just money, it's standing. A creditor gets to ask questions. A creditor gets notified. A creditor gets to turn up at a certain kind of meeting, on a certain kind of day, when a Japanese distributor is walking around the 9th floor with an accountant and a very particular expression. In 8 months, that day was coming. I knew the date because I'd stood in a corridor and heard a man scream about it. I put the file under the bed in the supply room, on top of the box from my grandfather's shop that I still hadn't opened, because it had been 11 years and there'd never been a night quiet enough. Upstairs, 14 girls were asleep, and one of them was awake, practicing with her hand flat against the wall like I taught her. 5 weeks to the 14th of March. I went to bed in a supply room, in a building with my name on nothing, with the entire second half of my life folded into my back pocket in 2 lines with somebody else's signature on it. And for the first time since I woke up in the wrong year, I slept the whole night. The Japanese came on a Thursday, and the whole 9th floor behaved like a house where the in-laws are due. Kobayashi Writes handles distribution for half the region. Music licensing, the ad slots that actually pay. No line had been chasing them for 2 years. In the other life, this meeting went badly. Then it went well 8 months later, and in between Ko lost 11 kilos and started smoking again. I was there because somebody had to steam 14 jackets and nobody else in that building knew how. She came out of the lift alone. No entourage, no assistant with a tablet, no coat over the shoulders. Misaki Hasegawa, 33, in a gray suit that cost less than the sofa she wasn't invited to sit on, holding a paper folder, which in that building was the most aggressive thing anyone had done all year. Everyone else on 9 had gone paperless in 2019 because it looked modern. No met her at the lift with both hands out. She shook one of them. They put her in the glass room and I could see the whole thing from the rail where I was hanging the jackets, which is the great advantage of being furniture. Nobody closes a blind for a sofa. 40 minutes. She opened the folder twice. I watched Ko do his presentation. He does a thing where he stands up at the end of a slide. Like the slide can't take the weight of him sitting, and I watched her not react. And I watched the room start to sweat, because there was no rhythm to play off. Yasol came in at the 20-minute mark, on cue in the ivory thing, and did the crown walk and the shy hello. Hasegawa looked at her for about as long as you'd look at a parked car. Then she asked one question, and even through glass I could read the shape of it on Ko's face, because his face made the expression of a man being asked for a receipt he never got. At 41 minutes she stood, thanked them, and left with the folder under her arm. No's smile stayed on for a full 4 seconds after she was through the door. Ko put his hand on the back of a chair and squeezed it. She came out to the service lift because the main one was full of people pretending to also be leaving. I was standing there with a rail of steamed jackets. She stopped a meter away and looked at the rail, then at my arm, then at my hair, and I got ready for the joke. Everyone makes the joke. Who set her breathing? She said. Her Korean was flat and correct. Learn it in a room. Sorry? The girl. In the walk-in, she breathes at the top of the phrase. Someone taught her that. It's not natural. She waited. It's good. I'm asking who. I did. Lift arrived. She stepped in and pressed the button before I could decide whether to follow with the rail. Your budget on 9 is fiction. 400 million for a showcase, and the trainee dorm has 1 working shower. I read the schedule, I read the invoices. I'm the laundry. You're the man who taught the asset to breathe, and you're carrying a rail. The doors started to close. That's the whole company in one lift. The doors shut. I stood there in the corridor and had, I'll admit, an inappropriate thought about a woman I had spoken 22 words to. Down in the basement, I got the notebook out and wrote, "She read the invoices." Because in the other life, nobody in that building ever did, and it took Kobayashi 8 months to come back. They came back when they found something. If she was already reading the invoices in February, she'd find it in March. I'd shifted something without touching it. I didn't know what yet. The dorm welfare box lives in a wall safe in the office off the ground floor corridor. Cash, because half of what a dorm actually spends money on can't take a card at 11 at night. Pharmacy runs, taxis, the plumber who fixes the shower nobody will approve a proper job for. 2 keys. Floor manager has one. The live-in trainer has the other. I am the live-in trainer. On the 4th of February, 6,200,000 won walked out of that safe. And I remember the date because at 9 the next morning, KO called in all staff in the practice room, which he had never once done for anything good. He stood at the front and did concern. He's excellent at concern. He has a whole posture for it, hands loose, voice a size down. "We're not going to the police," he said. That's my decision, and I'll take the heat for it. There are minors in this building. There are sponsors. If this gets out, the ones who get destroyed are the girls, and they didn't do anything. 14 trainees in tracksuits sitting on the floor looking at each other. So we'll handle it here, quietly. Whoever it was, and I think we all understand the situation, has until Friday to come to me. Nobody said my name. Nobody had to. There are 2 keys, and everyone in that room knew the floor manager had been in Gangneung with his wife's family since Sunday. Yisol was standing at the back by the mirror. She waited until the murmur got to the right volume, and then she did the thing that made her worth 11 magazine covers. "It's not him," she said. The room turned. "I've known Woo Jin for 7 years. He gave up everything for this company. If anyone here thinks he'd steal from children, say it to me now." Beautiful. Genuinely. Watch what it does. It puts my name in the air, out loud for the first time, and it makes her the one defending it. Now everyone in the room is thinking about me and feeling grateful to her for it. 14 girls looked at the floor. One of them, Ha-eun, back row, no talent for politics, said, "Nobody thinks that," in an accent from Gwangju, and got looked at. Ko let it breathe, then landed it soft. "Nobody's accusing anyone? That's why we're doing it this way." That's why we're doing it this way. Meaning, the alternative is the police, and if I go to the police, guess whose name is on the second key. Here's what happens next, in the version of this story where I hadn't already lived through it. I say nothing. I go quiet and helpful, and I let it die down, because I'm exhausted and I need this job. 2 weeks later, the money is found as an accounting error. Everyone gets a memo, and the thing that stays in the building forever is a smell around me. That smell is how you end a man's career without ever writing anything down. I know that because in the other life this happened in July, and it wasn't me. It was the night guard, Mr. Wan 62. And he was gone by the end of the month, and I never asked a single question because I was busy. Now it had come early, and it had come for me. Second time, the schedule had moved. Both times toward me. I didn't say anything in the practice room. I got the girls back on breathwork and ran the session. And at the end, Ha-eun waited by the door until everyone left and said, "Sunbae, that's not fair." And I told her to go and eat something. Then I went to the corner shop under the stairs and asked Duke Soo-ha for his ledger for the 4th of February. He didn't ask why. He put the iron down, wiped his hands, and took the book off the shelf, and that was the entire conversation. Old men, who used to be police, do not need the middle part of a story. Here's what a laundry ledger has that a security camera doesn't. It doesn't get wiped after 30 days. It doesn't belong to the company, and nobody thinks about it. Ha's book runs consecutively. Number, item, time in, name or phone, time out, price. The counterfoil goes on the garment. He's kept them for 7 years because a man lied to him in 1999. 4th of February. 2 entries between midnight and 6. 2011-47, suit jacket, navy, single stain right cuff. In 340, name, KO. Phone, the last 4 digits match the number in the staff directory taped inside the office door. Out, 4:55 the following afternoon. Priority service, which costs double, which is a thing you pay for when you need a jacket back before somebody notices it was gone. That was it. That was the whole weapon. Because on the 5th, in front of 40 people, Chan Woo-ko had explained that he'd driven down to Busan on the 3rd for his mother's memorial and got back at 8 on the morning of the 4th, which was why he hadn't heard about the safe until he arrived. Busan is 4 hours if the road loves you. I didn't go to no with it. That's the mistake. The version of me who runs to the founder waving paper is a man asking permission and you never get permission. I waited 9 days. 9 days of the smell of conversations that stopped when I came into the kitchen. Of the floor manager avoiding the corridor I was in. 9 days is long enough for everyone to get comfortable with the story. And comfort is the thing you want in the room when you take the floor out. On the 14th of February, which I enjoyed, given everything accounting held the monthly staffing review in the glass room on 7. And by tradition, the trainee dorm reports its numbers in person, which meant me, with a clipboard, being ignored for 11 minutes at the end. Ko was in the room because Ko is in every room. They got to my line item. The head of accounting, a decent tired woman called Mrs. Jang, asked about the welfare shortfall and how we were covering the pharmacy runs. "We're not," I said. "We've been paying out of our own pockets since the 4th. I've got 7 receipts here for a total of 410,000 won, and one of the girls has an inhaler she's been rationing." Silence. Ko started to say something about the ongoing internal matter. "On the internal matter," I said, "can we settle the timeline? Because I've been running the dorm on my own money for 10 days on the basis of a timeline, and I'd like to know it's right." "It's not the forum," Ko said. "It's an accounting review of the dorm budget." I put the clipboard down. "It's the only forum there is." Mrs. Jang, God bless her, said, "Go on." So I laid it out. Flat, boring, no adjectives, the way you read out numbers. The safe holds 2 keys. The floor manager was in Gangneung, confirmed by his own KTX booking, which is in the expense claim on page 4 of the packet in front of everyone. My key was on me in the dorm, and from 10 p.m., I was in practice room B with 2 trainees running late vocals, and that room's card log is on the same system as the packet, and there are 2 girls who'll say so. And the third possibility, I said, is that somebody used the master. There is a master. It's in the safe in the executive office on 9. And the log for that says the last withdrawal was the 28th of January by senior management for an insurance inspection, and it was never signed back in. Ko's neck went first. That's where it shows on him, a red coming up over the collar like heat coming up a wall. You're accusing me? I'm reading the log. It's the company's log. If it's wrong, that's worse. I was in Busan. You said that. I let the pause do a little work. The road was closed on the 3rd north of Daejeon from about 9 for a spill. I remember because our bus company invoiced us for the delay. So I wondered how the night went for you. I hadn't remembered that. I'd looked it up. That's the whole trick of my entire life now. I know which stone to turn over, and then I turn it over like a normal man. I drove around it. Sure. I opened the folder and put the photocopy on the table and turned it so Mrs. Jang could read it, not so Ko could. This is the ledger from the cleaners on the corner for the 4th. Ticket 20-1147. Navy jacket, single stain on the right cuff, dropped in person at 3:40 in the morning. Name and phone Ko. Priority service collected the next afternoon. The original books with the owner. It runs consecutively and it's been kept the same way for 30 years, so it can't be inserted into. Nobody in that room understood what a consecutive ledger meant except Mrs. Jang, who had been doing books since 1991, and she went very still, which was all I needed. That's not. Ko's hand did something with the air. That could be any Ko. It's your phone number. So I dropped off a jacket. At 3:40 in the morning, in Seoul, on the night you were 4 hours south at your mother's memorial, I closed the folder. That's all I'm saying. I'm not accusing anybody of anything, and I would like the dorm's 410,001. I sat down. You want to know what a face slap actually looks like in a room full of adults? Nothing. Nothing happens. Nobody gasps. Mrs. Jang wrote something down. The junior producer looked at his hands like they had subtitles. Ko sat there with his neck red to the jaw and said, "Fine," about the 410,001, and the meeting moved to the next line item, which was catering. That's it. That's the whole slap. 3 days later, a memo went round saying the shortfall had been resolved as a reconciliation error and thanking everyone for their patience and discretion. No apology. There's never an apology. You don't do this for the apology. You do it because a story got into a room where numbers live and numbers don't forget. Mrs. Jang would remember that ledger in 11 weeks when auditors from a Japanese distributor asked her, in a very polite way, whether the dorm accounts had ever shown irregularities. And because Chan-woo Ko now knew that the laundry had paper, that's the point at which a clever man goes quiet and careful for a year. Ko is not a clever man. Ko is a quick one. There's a difference, and the difference is the entire back half of my plan. He came to find me that evening in the basement, alone, and did the thing where he stands too close and lowers his voice to make it feel like a favor. You think you did something today. I got 410,001 for the inhalers. 7 years you've been furniture. 7 years nobody looked at you. He was breathing through his mouth. You want to be looked at? Fine. Enjoy being looked at. Then he said the sentence I'd been waiting 3 weeks for because men like him cannot help themselves. You have no idea who I do business with. I said no, and he took that as a win and left. Upstairs, I wrote it in the notebook under his name, word for word, with the date. Not because it was evidence, because it was a promise. A man who says that sentence out loud says it to other people, in worse rooms, on the record, sooner or later. Give him room, give him time. He'll do the rest himself. She came to the dorm at 11 at night on the 20th with a thermos and a face she'd chosen in the car. Ye Sol had not been inside the trainee dorm in 2 years. It smells like fabric softener and instant noodles and the cheap plug-in air fresheners the girls buy at Olive Young, and she stood in the corridor in a camel coat and did not put her bag down anywhere. The camel coat. Same one. I looked at it for a full second and then made myself stop. I brought you dinner, she said. I ate. You didn't. You never eat on Thursdays. You teach until 9 and then you don't eat. She held out the thermos. Abalone, from the place on the hill you like. It was from the place I liked. That's how she works. She isn't lazy. She never once got a detail wrong in 7 years. She just never once used one for anything except this. We sat on the stairwell steps because there was nowhere else to sit. She took out her phone and turned it face down on her knee, which is her version of a wedding vow. The team's been horrible to you. It's fine. It's not. She let a beat go. Ko says you humiliated him in front of accounting. I read out a laundry receipt. That's what I said. That's just Wu Jin being literal. She smiled sideways at me. He hates you now, you know properly. He'll live. He might not. Light joking, the way she does. Then, quieter. Do you remember the roof at the Noan building? Here it comes. She had a photograph on her phone already open. She'd have loaded it in the car, a printed one, actually, photographed off paper, so the flash was in the corner. Two idiots on a tar roof in 2017. Her, 19, in a school tracksuit, hair scraped back, no face on yet, holding a can of coffee like it was a trophy. Me, green-headed, laughing at something out of frame. She'd cried on that roof the week before that photo because her mother had stopped picking up. Nobody else was there, she said. You've said, because it's the only true thing about me. She looked straight ahead at the fire door. Everything else is a room somebody built. That's not me being sad, Oppa. It's just what it is. There are 300 people whose mortgage is my face. And there's one person who saw me before there was a face. That was good. That was genuinely good. 9/10 of what she says is architecture, and every so often she puts a real brick in it so the whole thing holds. I did want to believe it. I'd like that on the record. Some part of me sat on that step at 11 at night and thought, it's 5 weeks, just dye the hair. Just do the 8 minutes, and this stops. Then she said, so do the 14th for me, and I noticed the shape. Not marry me. Not even choose me. Do the segment, 8 minutes of live television. A groom in a suit and a story about a girl who never forgot the man from the basement in Noan. I'm not the fiancé. I'm the third act. Sure, I said. Her whole body changed. She turned and hugged me, and her hair was in my face, and it smelled the way it had for 7 years, and I sat there with my arms doing very little. Thank you. She pulled back and dug in her bag. Oh, before I forget. From the clinic, a white bottle. Pharmacy label, my name printed on it, my dosage, Dr. Yu's signature stamp in the corner. You gave them to me on 9, she said. He said, you're due a refill, and you never come down for it. And honestly, you don't. You're going to give yourself a heart attack from being stubborn about your heart medication, which even for you, I turned the bottle over in my hand. My refill was not due. My refill was due on April 8. I had 41 capsules in the drawer in the supply room, counted, because a man with my particular heart counts. Thanks, I said. Take one now so I can watch. After food. Fine. She stood, brushing her coat down, back to normal, the warmth already going back in the drawer. The stylist will come to you on the 12th. Just let her do the hair, Oppa. Not for me, for the frame. Green reads badly under those lights. It goes gray. Then she left, and I sat on the step with a thermos of good abalone porridge in one hand and a bottle of my own death in the other, 48 days ahead of schedule. Third time the calendar had moved. I want to say I stayed calm. What actually happened is that I went down 2 flights to the boiler room where the noise is, and stood with my hands on the pipes for about 4 minutes doing nothing at all. Then I went to the cleaners. Ha was doing callers at midnight with the radio on. I put the bottle on the counter and said, I need to know what's in this, and I need it to count for something later. He looked at the bottle. He looked at me. He turned the radio off. Have you opened it? No, don't. He took a plastic sleeve out of a drawer, the kind he uses for repaired garments, and didn't touch the bottle. Who handed it to you? Lim Ye Sol, 10 minutes ago. She says the clinic doctor gave it to her on the 9th floor. In front of anyone? No. Then she's not the one to prove it with. He pulled the ledger over and started writing while he talked. Anything you carry around for 3 months in your pocket is worth nothing in a room. Wu Jina? Everybody thinks the trick is getting the thing. It isn't. It's being able to say where the thing has been every hour since. He wrote, 20th Feb, 015. Sealed container, white pharmacy label, Bei Wu Jin. Received from Bei Wu Jin in person. Then he made me sign it, and he signed it, and he wrote the ledger number on the sleeve. Now it's in the book, he said. Same book as everything else. The book runs in order, and it's been running for 30 years. And if a lawyer wants to say I inserted a page for you, he'll have to say I've been faking it since Kim Young-sam was president. How do I test them? Not at a pharmacy. He put the sleeve in the safe under the counter, next to about 11 million won of other people's suits. There's a lab in Yoido does independent assays for insurance work. Costs 200, maybe 250 for a full panel. They'll take 3-4 weeks. I've got the money. He looked at me over the glasses. You have 900,000 won and a bike you already sold. I have no idea how he knew that. Old cops. And you take one out of that bottle for the test, he went on, and you leave the rest sealed. If it's nothing but sugar, you'll want to throw the bottle at somebody's head. Don't. A bottle you can hold up in a room in October is worth more than a fight in February. And in the meantime, I take nothing. In the meantime, you go to a pharmacy on the other side of the river and you pay cash for your own, like a person with a brain. I did that on the way back, a 24-hour place near the station. A real pharmacist who counted them out and asked about my prescription history and gave me a lecture about not skipping doses. 240,000 won at the lab in Uedo on the Monday. 4 weeks. That left me 600 and something in the world and a debt file under my bed, worth nothing until August. Sang Woo Yu, 44 in-house clinic, 3rd floor, keeps a fishbowl of individually wrapped sweets on the desk like a dentist for children. I went down on the Wednesday to say thank you. That's it. That was the whole plan. Say thank you, look at his face, leave. Ah, the trainer. He waved me in. Terrible tie, small blue anchors. Did you get them? Yisel brought them up. Thanks for chasing it. Good, good. You people never come down, he was typing. You're the one who never comes down. I wasn't due till April. His hands kept typing for maybe half a second too long. We reordered the whole staff list. Supplier change, type. Better formulation, actually. Same active, different binder. Different binder. You wouldn't notice? How would I notice? You wouldn't. He laughed. At nothing. Then he swiveled the chair around and did the doctor voice, the warm one. Actually, while you're here, any tremor? Now, here's the thing about that question. I was 30 years old. My chart said congenital, stable, boring, no episodes in 11 years. I had walked in there upright, talking normally, with steady hands, holding a paper cup. Nobody asks a man with steady hands whether his hands have started shaking. You only ask that when you know what's coming, and you want to know how far along it is. No, I said. Should there be? No, standard question. He wrote something. Any palpitations at night? 3, 4 a.m.? 3, 4 a.m. In the other life, it started at 3 in the morning. In the other life, I told this man that in this room, 11 months from now, and he patted my knee and said hearts are strange. He wasn't asking me a question. He was checking his schedule against mine. None, I said. Sleep like a stone. Good. Good relief, or something wearing it. Come down in 6 weeks, and we'll do a proper baseline. Bloods, ECG, on the company. On the company. A baseline, so that later there'd be a chart showing a decline with dates on it, signed by a doctor, and no one would ever have to say the word poison out loud. I took a sweet from the fishbowl on the way out, because he was watching, and a man who takes a sweet is not a man who suspects anything. I stood in the corridor and unwrapped it and ate it, and thought about how many of us there had been, not romantic. Practical. A clinic that keeps a supplier change and a spare bottle and a baseline appointment ready for a difficult staff member is not a clinic that improvised it for one vocal trainer with green hair. That's a procedure. Procedures get written down. Procedures have a first time and a second and a purchase history. I wrote in the notebook under Yu's name, he's done this before. Find the others. The pool on the 26th is where it caught up with me. 6:15 in the morning, 3001, the old man on the desk, the tiles like mouthwash. Empty except for a woman doing slow lengths in the far lane. It's the chlorine. Sinchan smelled of chlorine. Not the ward, the corridor outside the ward, because the physio pool was on the same floor, and the whole wing had that smell in it day and night. I'd forgotten. 2 months back in this life, and I'd genuinely forgotten. And then I put my face in the water, and it came up my nose, and I was there. Bed 19. Plastic bracelet cut too big, so it slid down to my thumb. The tremor by then, not a tremor, more like the whole arm belonged to a machine somebody was operating badly from another room. Ko with the clipboard. Not evil about it. That's the part I want people to understand. He was in a hurry, and he had a document that needed a signature. And he was polite the way you're polite to a taxi driver. Here and initial the second page. The document assigned every arrangement, chart, and vocal guide I had ever written for Lim Ye Sol, past and future, to the company, in exchange for a settlement of 11 million won, which is what they thought 7 years was worth, and which they never paid. My hand wouldn't do the second character of my own name. It came out like a child's. That's fine, Ko said. It's fine, it's just paperwork. And in the doorway, in the camel coat, arms folded because the corridor was cold, Yesul said, it's just paperwork, Oppa. She'd come from something. Her face was still done. She stayed in the doorway the whole visit, 8 minutes. I counted them, because that's what I did in there. I counted things, and at the end, she checked her reflection in the black of the window and fixed her lower lip with her little finger. She said, get better, okay? Then she left, and Ko left with the clipboard, and a nurse came in and asked if my family were coming, and I said yes, because it was easier than the other answer. There's no big scene after that. I keep looking for one, and there isn't. A room got quieter over about 9 days. That's all dying is when nobody's watching. I came up out of the water in lane 3 with my heart going like something with wings in it, and I held the edge, and the woman in the far lane didn't even look up. Then I did 400 meters, badly, and went to work. March 12th, the stylist came to the dorm with the swatch ring, and I sent her away. The 13th, Ye Sul rang 11 times. The 14th was a Friday. Live at 8, studio in Sangam, 400 in the audience, 3 cameras and Kobayashi Writes logo on the sponsor board at the bottom of the running order, because they'd bought the slot 2 weeks earlier, which was not something that had happened in the other life at all, and which meant Misaki Hasegawa was in the building. Got there at 4 with the shirts because I was still, technically, the person who brings the shirts. They'd built a little set, 2 chairs, a low table, a wall of white flowers, and the crown on a stand at the side under its own light, because the crown does not sit in a green room with the rest of us. Hair and makeup tried twice more. At 6, K.O. himself came into the corridor holding a box of black dye like a man delivering a summons. 20 minutes in the chair? No. Bae, he got close. Do you understand what tonight is? 8 minutes. It's the biggest night of her life. It's a segment between a shampoo ad and the weather. He looked at me, and something went across his face. The first flicker of a man realizing the furniture has been at eye level for a while now. After tonight, he said, "You're done here. You know that." I do. He took that as agreement and went to find a producer. Here's the part I didn't see, and I've had it described to me by 4 people since, so I'll give it to you the way they gave it to me. At 8:02, Ye Sul sat down in the left chair and told the country the story about the basement in Noan, the coffee can, the mother who stopped picking up. She did it beautifully. The audience made that sound audiences make, and in the gallery the producer said, "Hold on her, hold, hold." At 8:06, the host said the sentence they'd written, "And I understand he's here tonight." At 8:06 and change, the floor manager pointed at the wing. And at 8:07, according to Mrs. Zhang from accounting, who was in row 4, a man with green hair and a gray suit that didn't fit him walked out to center stage, took the microphone the host was holding out and said, "Good evening. My name is Bae Woo Jin. I've been employed by No Line for 7 years as a vocal trainer, and I'm the man they've put in the running order tonight. I'm not going to be marrying Miss Lim tonight or later. She has no obligations to me, and I have none to her. Thank you for the 8 minutes. You can have 6 of them back." Then he put the microphone in the host's hand, bowed once to the audience, and walked off the way he'd come. The gallery went to break 4 seconds late. On the recording, you can hear one man in the audience laugh, alone, and stop. What I saw was this: white lights, 400 faces I couldn't make out, a black camera the size of a fridge, and my own voice coming back at me off the flowers. And Ye Sul, in the left chair, in the ivory dress with her hands in her lap. She didn't move. Not the mouth, not the eyes. She held the face for the full 4 seconds until the cut, which is more disciplined than any of the rest of them managed. And then behind the flowers, out of shot, she stood up. And I heard her heel come down on the studio floor. Hard. Then nothing, because she never lets herself be heard losing. The corridor to the service lift was 100 meters of gray carpet, and it took me a very long time to walk it. 2 runners flattened against the wall to let me past. A woman from wardrobe said, "Oh my God," to nobody. The lift was already held open. Misaki Hasegawa was standing in it with a paper folder under her arm, in the same gray suit, looking at me the way you look at a delivery that's come earlier than expected. 9, she said when I got in. Then, as the doors closed, "That was expensive." "Yes, for them, I mean." She pressed the button. Kobayashi bought that slot. 8 minutes of a sponsor's airtime, and their groom used 2 of them to resign from a marriage on live television. "Do you know what our legal team is doing right now?" "No." "Neither do I." I told them to sit down. She turned her head a fraction. "You knew the running order was theirs and you did it anyway." "That's either very stupid or you've read something I haven't." "I read the invoices," I said. 22 words the first time, fewer than 60 the second. She didn't smile. She looked at the numbers going up, and at floor 7 she said, without any particular weight, like a woman noting a scheduling conflict, "Don't sign anything with anyone until I've seen it." By midnight there were 400,000 posts, and I had been given a name, the green-haired one. Then, within about 2 hours, once somebody found a photo of the tattoo under a rolled-up sleeve, the delivery guy who got upgraded. That was the general theory. A nobody from the basement had been handed a national TV slot, and a woman the whole country had spent 3 weeks agreeing about. And he'd stood on a stage and given 6 minutes back, which is not a thing a person does unless he is either mentally unwell or a liability. Both theories got their own hashtags. The unwell won on volume. The liability won in the group chats that mattered. Nobody wrote the third theory, which was that a man had refused to marry Miss Universe on live television, and had been extremely calm about it, because that theory doesn't sell anything. No line statement went out at 12:40 a.m. 4 sentences. The staff member had acted without authorization. The company apologized to the broadcaster and to sponsors. The matter was internal, and Miss Lim asked for privacy at a difficult time. Staff member. Not fiancé, not partner, staff member. Even in the apology, I got demoted. My phone had 91 missed calls, 11 from her. The dorm was awake when I got back, all 14 of them in the common room with the lights off and the TV on, and when I came through the door, they scattered like somebody had turned a light on in a kitchen at night. Ha Yun didn't scatter. She stood there in her pajamas with her arms crossed, 17 years old, furious on my behalf in an accent she'd been told to file down. Sunbae? Was it true? The bit about there being no obligations? It was true. They're saying you're ill. They would. Are you ill? No. I put the keys on the shelf. Go to bed. We're doing breath at 10 and I'm not moving it for the internet. She went about 4 steps and turned around. You'll still be here at 10? Fair question. 10, I said. I wasn't, as it turned out. At 9:15 the following morning, a floor manager and a woman from HR I'd never seen before came to the supply room with a printed letter, and by 9:40 I had a cardboard box, a final pay slip with 2 weeks in lieu, and a request to hand over the dorm key. The dorm key I gave them. The other things in that room, a notebook with 51 dates in it, a debt file worth 9,800,000 won of somebody else's garbage, a lab receipt from Yoido, and a taped-up box from a seal carver's shop in Yuljiro that had been sitting under a bed for 11 years unopened, went out of the building in a laundry cart, under 14 shirts. Because nobody in that building has ever once looked in the cart. Chan Woo-ko was waiting by the security desk to watch me leave. He'd put on a coat for it. 7 years, he said. 7. You had a place here. I had a rail. He leaned in for the last one, and I want you to know I would have paid money for him to say it. And he said it for free, in front of a security guard and a receptionist, and a camera that records audio. You'll be back in 6 weeks asking for work, and I'll be the one who decides. And when that day comes, remember who you did this in front of. Then he tapped the desk twice, pleased with himself, and went to catch the lift. I walked out onto the road with a cardboard box in a laundry cart at 20 to 10 in the morning with 600,000 won to my name and no job. The lab in Uedo would call in 9 days. Kobayashi's audit team would land on the 9th floor in 11 weeks. And in a taped-up box under 14 shirts, there was a drawer of rice paper impressions going back to the 70s, which I had never once opened, because for 11 years there'd never been a night quiet enough. Now every night was quiet. It takes about 4 days to be erased from an industry, and most of it is done by people who mean you no harm at all. Nobody called and told me I was blacklisted. That's not how it works. What happens is that a woman at a mid-size agency in Cheongdam, who had been trying to hire me for 2 years, stops answering, and a producer who owed me a favor replies at 1 a.m. with sorry hyung. And a vocal school in Mokdong that had offered me evening classes in January writes to say they've filled the position, and every single one of those people is embarrassed, and none of them are cruel. They just all got the same phone call from somebody with a better phone number than mine. Ko had said 6 weeks. He was showing off. It took him 9 days. I moved into the room above Ha's cleaners on the 1st of April. 3 meters by 4, a hot plate, a window onto the wall of the building next door, and a floor that shook every time the big press came downstairs. 400 a month, and Ha wanted 350 until I told him not to insult me. I taught in a basement in Nowon again. Actually, the basement, not the same room, but the same building, 2 floors down, from where a 19-year-old with a squeaky door voice had once handed me an envelope with 110,000 won in it. 16 students, 30,000 won an hour. Cash, no receipts, mostly kids whose parents had run out of money at the exact point where their kids started getting good. I made 1,200,000 won in April, which after rent and eating left me roughly where I'd been at 24, except with worse knees. The lab in Yoido called on the 9th. A woman read it out in the voice you'd use for a delivery time. The submitted capsule contained lactose monohydrate, microcrystalline cellulose, magnesium stearate, and colorant. No active pharmaceutical ingredient. She asked if I wanted the report by post or email, and then she asked with a small change in her voice, "Sir, you're not taking these, are you?" "No, because there's nothing in them." "I know, post, please. And keep the sample." I stood in the street outside the pharmacy where I'd been buying my own for cash and did the arithmetic one more time, which is what I do instead of feeling things now, 48 days early. If Yi Sol had come with that bottle on the 20th of February and I'd been the man I was in the other life, grateful, tired, in love with a person who existed for about 11 months in 2017, I'd have started them that night, 2 a day. By the showcase in March, my hands would have been unreliable. By June, unemployable. By the following spring, Bed 19. They'd have got me 11 months earlier this time, and they'd have done it while I was still in the building, thanking them for the perk. I put the report in Ha's safe in a sleeve with a number on it and went and taught a 15-year-old how to stop singing through her nose. Ha did the thing old men do instead of saying anything, which is buy you dinner and complain about it. He'd shut the shop early 3 a.m., which for him is early, and we ate pork bone soup at the 24-hour place by the station. And he told me the broth was worse than it used to be. And then he said, "How much have you got left?" "Enough." "How much?" 210,000. He put his spoon down. "I've got 16 students," I said. "It's fine. You've got a room over my shop and a box of paper you bought off a man in Yeongdongpo, which I know about because Mrs. Kang across the road told me you were carrying a file like a lunatic." He picked the spoon back up. "You're waiting for August." "How do you know I'm waiting for August?" "Because you've stopped looking at the calendar like it owes you money. Men who are waiting for something look calm and stupid. You look calm and stupid." I laughed, which I hadn't done in a while, and he took that as payment for the soup and never brought it up again. That's the whole warm scene. He's 68. I got him another 18 months last time by accident, which is to say I got him nothing. And he died in his son's spare room in Daejeon within a year and a half of a phone shop opening, where his press used to be. This time, the lease on that corner unit comes up for renewal on the 11th of November, and No Line's property arm buys it on the 12th. I had that date circled before I had anything else circled. Chan Woo Ko destroyed himself on the 2nd of May at 11:52 p.m. with a 38-second voice message, and I didn't even have to be in the room. Nobody had removed me from the dorm staff group chat. 6 weeks after they walked me out with a cardboard box, I was still in it, along with the floor manager, the 2 night staff, the nutritionist, and Ko, because Ko had created it, and nobody creates a group chat and then maintains it. He meant to send it to a contact called Sanghoon Stage. He sent it to dorm ops. I know exactly how it happened because both entries start with the same 2 characters on a Korean phone keyboard, and it was midnight, and he'd been drinking. 38 seconds. I've listened to it enough times that I can type it out with the pauses in. Hyung, it's me. Yeah, for the Busan set. Do it the same as the tour, put 40 on top, invoice the full number, and we'll settle after. The old man doesn't read anything under 50 million. He never has. He signs the block. And listen, the other thing, tell you the trainer's off the list. We don't need it now. He's gone. He's finished. Tell him to stop the order. I'm not paying for what I'm not using. All right. All right. Next week. 22 seconds of kickback fraud. 16 seconds of the other thing. Trainer's off the list. Stop the order. I'm not paying for what I'm not using. He deleted it 4 minutes later. Everyone else in that group chat was asleep at midnight, because they are people with jobs that start at 7. I was awake because I live over a laundry that runs all night. I want to be honest about what I did in the next hour because it's the part people find strange. I did not post it. It would have gone up like petrol. Miss Universe's agency manager caught on tape talking about padding invoices and stopping a prescription for a man who'd just been fired on national television. That's 4 days of trending, a variety show apology, and precisely nothing else. Ko would have been suspended, then quietly moved to a subsidiary in Ilsan, and the whole thing would have been about me, which would have made every single word of it deniable. Instead, I got the file to Ha, who put it in the safe with a number and a date, and made a copy, and then I went to see a man about a stage. Sanghoon Kwok builds sets. 56 hands like a bricklayer, an office in Guro with a kettle and no receptionist. His company built the 2019 tour, invoiced 81 million won, got paid 40, and spent 2 years chasing the rest until he sold the debt to a note dealer in Yeongdongpo for 11 million because his wife needed a deposit for a shop. I owned that debt. It cost me 2,400,000 won. He looked at the file and then at me and asked what I wanted for it. Nothing, I said. I'm not here to collect. I want to play you something. 38 seconds later, he sat back in his chair and stared at the kettle for a long time, and then he said a word I won't write down, and then 40 on top, 40% on the tour. Not you, though. No, not me. He was very calm, which is how you know it's the real thing. There were 4 contractors on that tour. If he was running 40 on the ones who played, and paying them out of the ones who didn't, then somebody wasn't paid so somebody else could be overpaid. I've got the original bid documents, all of them, in the cabinet. He looked at me. Why are you giving me this? Because you'll do it properly and I won't. He would too. That's the thing about a man like Quack. I'd have posted it and got 4 days. He filed a formal complaint with the National Tax Service on the 22nd of May with 11 attachments, and a copy to No Line's board and a copy to the broadcaster's compliance office. Because when a 56-year-old contractor with 2 years of unpaid invoices finally gets a reason, he does not do it on the internet. He does it with a stapler. Ko had said it to my face at the security desk. You have no idea who I do business with. He was right. I didn't. But Sang-hoon Kwok did, and he had all their bid documents in a filing cabinet in Guro. Ha-eun got cut on the 19th of May. She rang me from a stairwell at 11 at night, which is how I know she'd been crying for a while and had stopped by then, because she was doing the thing where you talk very fast about logistics. They'd restructured the trainee line after March. 6 girls out. The reasons given were the reasons that are always given. Development pace, market fit, and in Ha-eun's case, the reason that was actually said out loud, twice, by the new vocal trainer, was her accent. He said it localizes me, she said. He said I sound like a delivery order. What did you say? Nothing. I said thank you for the opportunity. A pause. Sunbae, that's what you're supposed to say. 17. 4 years in that building. Home is a 2-hour bus from Gwangju, and her mother works in a school kitchen and had been telling everyone in the neighborhood that her daughter was going to be on TV. Are you in Seoul until the end of the month? I asked. Till Friday, then the dorm needs the bed. Come to Nawon on Wednesday at 4. Bring nothing. I can't pay for lessons. I didn't ask you for money. I said 4 o'clock. She came at 10 to 4, because of course she did. I want to be clear that this isn't a story about how I made her a star. I taught her for 6 weeks in a basement, with a hot plate and a piano missing 2 keys. And what I actually fixed was one thing. She was clipping the ends of her phrases because she'd spent 4 years being told to take up less room, and it had got into her lungs. You can hear fear in a phrase ending. Everybody can, nobody knows what they're hearing. Also, I stopped her flattening her vowels. Not to hide the accent, the opposite. Her Juala vowels are long and they sit low, and if you stop apologizing for them and put them on the beat on purpose, you get a sound nobody in Seoul has, which is the only thing in that industry anyone will ever pay for. 6 weeks. Then, on the 28th of June, I did the one thing I did do for her, which was make a phone call. Not to a friend. I don't have those anymore. To the woman at the mid-size agency in Cheongdam who'd stopped answering me in April. She still didn't answer. So I sent her 41 seconds of Ha-eun, unaccompanied, singing 4 bars of an old trot song her grandmother used to sing. In the vowels she'd been told to file down, recorded on a phone in a basement with the aircon audible. She rang back in 9 minutes. Where did you get her? No line cut her in May. Accent. They cut this. A pause. Woo Jinna, I can't be seen to be talking to you. You're not talking to me. You're talking to a 17-year-old from Gwangju who's on a bus home on Friday. They signed her on the 3rd of July. I didn't go to the signing. I found out from a text message with 9 exclamation marks and a photograph of a contract on a table, and then 2 days later, an envelope came to Ha's shop with 300,000 won in it, and a note that said first installment in 17-year-old handwriting. I sent it back with a note that said be your mother something, which she did, and which I only found out about a year later. That's the end of that thread for a while. She goes and has her own life. Sometimes a person just gets out of the building. I opened my grandfather's box on the 8th of July at 2 in the morning because the press downstairs had broken and it was the first properly quiet night in 11 years. Tape gone brittle. Inside, 2 lathe chucks wrapped in newspaper from 2013, a tin of stamp pads, 40-odd blanks of boxwood and a couple of buffalo horn, and the thing I'd actually kept it all for, which was the impression ledgers. 9 of them. Hardbound, thread-sewn, going back to 1971. Every seal that left that shop, pressed twice onto rice paper, with the date, the client, and the fee. Grandpa's whole working life in red ink, in order, because that's how his generation proved they'd done a thing. I sat on the floor and went through them for 4 hours. Banks, a shipping company, 2 temples, a dental association. Hundreds of small businesses that don't exist anymore. March 1994. No Line Entertainment. Corporate seal, full set, 3. And in the fee column, where every other line had a number, my grandfather had written, in his small square hand, Misu, unpaid, folded into the gutter of that page. So tightly it had left a shine on the paper, was a single sheet. It was 1 paragraph long, handwritten, dated March 11th, 1994. Byung-ho No acknowledged that he could not pay for the corporate seal set for his new company, valued at 1,800,000 won, and undertook in place of payment to transfer to the carver Bae Moonsik a 12% interest in No Line Entertainment, such interest to be issued on the company's first allotment of shares or on demand thereafter. Signed by Byung-ho No, stamped with the brand new corporate seal, still sharp, the ink slightly heavy at the top left, the way a new seal always goes. And in the corner, small, where nobody looks, the carver's mark, a square, 4 characters, a border of interlocking hooks. I sat there with my sleeve pushed up and my left arm next to a piece of paper from 1994, and I did not move for a while. 12%. Here's the thing that made it live rather than being a funny piece of family history, and it took me until about 4 in the morning to see it. Everybody who has ever tried to enforce a 1994 handwritten undertaking runs into the same wall. Prove the counterparty's mark is genuine. The company's seal side is easy. It's registered, it's on file. There are 1,000 documents to compare it to. The carver's side isn't, because my grandfather never registered his personal mark anywhere. He cut it into the corner of his own work as a maker's brand and refused, on principle, to let it be recorded, because a mark any fool can read isn't protecting anything, which meant that for 31 years the only place in the world that mark existed was in 9 hardbound ledgers under a bed. And on the inside of my left forearm, mirrored, done off a photograph by a man in Hongdae who asked me 3 times if I was sure. My grandfather made exactly 1 copy of the unfakeable thing, and he made it in a form nobody could sell, lose, or burn. I don't think he planned it. I think he just liked the mark, and I liked him, and I was 22 and sad and got a tattoo. Not everything is a plan. Some things are just luck arriving 11 years late. At 6 in the morning, I photographed all 9 ledgers, page by page, on the floor of a room over a laundry, and at 8, I walked the originals 4 blocks to a notary in a building with a lift that only goes to 7, and paid 290,000 won. I did not have to have them registered, sealed, and deposited with a certificate that fixed the date and my name. Then I went and taught a 15-year-old how to breathe. Misaki Hasegawa came to the cleaners on the 29th of July at 1:10 in the morning. I know the time because Ha wrote it in the ledger. He writes everyone in the ledger. She stood in the doorway in the gray suit with the paper folder under her arm, and he asked her, without looking up from a caller, whether she was collecting or dropping off. Neither. And you're in the way of the door. She moved out of the way of the door. I came down the outside stairs in a t-shirt and gym shorts with my hair flat on one side, which I mention because in 4 months of thinking about this woman roughly twice a day, I had not once pictured that. You're hard to find, she said. I'm 200 meters from the building. Yes, that's why. She put the folder on the counter, next to the steam press, and Ha moved a jacket 6 inches so it wouldn't get damp, and then went on working. He did not leave. She looked at him for a second and decided something about him, and never looked at him again, which was the correct call. Kobayashi Writes is acquiring No Line's distribution and licensing arm, she said. Signing is targeted for the 2nd week of October. Due diligence started in June. I'm running it. Congratulations. Don't. She opened the folder. In June, my team found a vendor payment pattern on the 2019 tour. 40% uplift on 3 contractors, funded by non-payment of a 4th. On the 22nd of May, the National Tax Service received a complaint with 11 attachments about exactly that pattern, filed by the 4th contractor, a Mr. Quack and Guro, who had spent 2 years doing nothing about it. He's a patient man. He's a patient man who suddenly had a recording. She let that sit. Mr. Quack was asked where he got it. He said a man came to his office who owned his old debt and wanted nothing for it. He described the man as having green hair. Downstairs, the press came down with the noise it makes, and neither of us said anything for 3 seconds. You bought distressed paper on No Line, she said. 9,800,000 won February through a dealer in Yeongdeungpo. Face value 41 million and change. 5 creditors. That's not something a man does with his last money for revenge. Revenge is cheaper. Is that a question? It's the 3rd thing on my page. She turned it over. The first 2 are the dorm welfare shortfall and a laundry ledger, which your accounting department's misses. Jang described to my auditor in some detail and, I would say, with feeling. How is Mrs. Jang? Resigning in September. She'll be paid until December. Misaki closed the folder. I don't want the paper. Your notes are a nuisance to me. 5 creditors withstanding at exactly the wrong moment. I could clear them for 41 million won tomorrow, and you'd be a rich man by your standards and out of my acquisition. That's the offer? No, she said it flatly. The way she says everything, and that's when I understood that this woman does not do the thing where you soften a sentence on the way in. That's what a reasonable person would offer. And I'm telling you, I considered it and stopped. Because the 4th item on my page is a purchase record. She took out a single sheet. A clinic supply invoice, 3rd floor, No Line, dated November 2016. A compounding pharmacy in Bucheon, a line item for 200 units of an inert capsule, matched size and color, no active ingredient. Ordered under the clinic's staff welfare account. Signed off by Dr. Sang-woo Yu, November 2016, 9 years ago. That is not the only one, she said. There are 4 purchase events in 10 years. 2016, 2019, 2022, and February this year. The February one was canceled by internal request on the 4th of May. I'm not paying for what I'm not using. I put my hand on the counter, and Ha put a cup of instant coffee next to it without a word, and I drank some of it, and it was terrible, and it helped. Who were the others? That's the question I came to ask you, she said. Because I'm running a due diligence on a company we're about to buy, and there is a pattern in the medical spend that my lawyers say is not our problem yet. And I would like it to become somebody's problem before it's mine. You want a name to hand it to? I want a person who already has a chain of custody. She looked briefly at the ledger on the counter and at the safe under it. You've been putting things in that book since February. How do you know what's in the book? I read the invoices, she said. You told me that in a lift. I assumed it was a joke until June. Downstairs, the press again. Ha, at the board, said nothing loudly. There's a lab report in that safe, I said. Uedo, April. The capsules Lim Yasol handed me in February contain lactose, cellulose, magnesium stearate, and dye. Misaki Hasegawa did not react. Not the face, not the hands. She took a pen out of her jacket, wrote 4 words on the back of the folder, and put the pen away. Then you're a victim in an ongoing offense and not a disgruntled ex-employee, she said. Those are different rooms. The second one you can't get into. The first one they have to let you speak in. Is that why you're here at 1 in the morning? I'm here at 1 in the morning because I fly at 6. She picked up the folder. I'm going to say the other thing now, and I would like you not to be clever about it. All right? When the acquisition closes, Kobayashi will need a person who understands the Korean vocal side and does not belong to anyone in that building. Every candidate I've interviewed belongs to somebody. You publicly set fire to your own career on our airtime, which cost me 200 million won and told me exactly one useful thing about you. That I'm stupid, that you can't be bought at the moment it matters most. She said it like a line item. So, don't sign anything with anyone. I told you that in March. In October, I'll put something in front of you and you'll say yes. Will I? Yes. She was already at the door. I've allocated the head count. It would be inconvenient for you to be difficult about it. And she left. And I stood there in a t-shirt at 1:30 in the morning in a laundry. Ha turned the jacket over and pressed the shoulder and said to the jacket, she wrote it in the book herself. Her name. Nobody does that. Do you like her? I have no opinion, said the man who had just brought me coffee for the first time in 6 years. Drink that. Dr. Sang Woo Yu folded on the 11th of September in a conference room in Uedo in front of 2 people from Kobayashi's legal team. One investigator from the National Tax Service who was there about something else entirely, and a lawyer he'd hired himself 2 days earlier, which is how everyone knew he was going to fold before he opened his mouth. I wasn't in the room. I was in a corridor for 6 hours with a bottle of water because my part took 11 minutes and they were at the front. Here's what my 11 minutes were. I identified the bottle. Ha! Identified the ledger and the chain, 20 February 0015, sealed, received in person, signed. And a man from the Uedo lab identified the report. Then we left and sat in a corridor, and Ha did the crossword. Yu's story, when it came, was the story these always are. He hadn't poisoned anyone. That was his position, and technically it was true, which is the entire horror of it. He had never put anything into anybody. He had ordered inert capsules from a compounding pharmacy for the clinic's welfare account, matched to size and color on request, and he had put them in the dispensing drawer for named staff. And he had continued to write those staff's real prescriptions in the system so the records looked correct. And then he had run their annual physicals and documented honestly and accurately their decline. Somebody else did the substituting. He just made the substitution possible, correct on paper, and medically documented. He gave them the names because his lawyer had told him the names were the only thing he had to sell. 2016, a choreographer, 41, who had been running a wage claim on behalf of 11 contract dancers and who developed an arrhythmia that ended his career within a year. He's alive. He teaches in Onsen now, has a pacemaker, and had spent 9 years believing he had bad luck and a bad heart. 2019. A road manager who'd been talking to a broadcaster about the tour accounts. Diabetic, insulin isn't as easy to fake, so what they did with him was messier, and I'm not going to write it down. He is not alive. His widow lives in Daegu, and she had, it turned out, kept every bottle. 2022, a stylist. She'd photographed something in an office. She got about 7 months of the treatment, and then quit the industry on her own and moved to Jeju, which is the only reason she can still climb stairs. February 2025, a vocal trainer with green hair who had asked for a 2-line receipt in a writing room and read out a laundry ticket in an accounting review. Canceled the 4th of May. I'm not paying for what I'm not using. 4 in 10 years. That's the number that got out, and that's the number that ended everything. Because 4 is not a scandal about a woman on television. 4 is a procedure with a purchase history, in a building with a name on it. The choreographer in Onsan is the one who ended no line in the end, not me. He gave a 40-minute interview to a current affairs program in October, sitting in a plastic chair in a rehearsal studio with his hand on his chest, where the pacemaker is, and he said, "I thought my heart was broken. It turns out it was working perfectly the whole time, and somebody was doing paperwork." Yu lost his license in December and got 2 years and 8 months. His lawyer argued that he was an employee following instructions, and the judge, who I would like to buy a drink one day, said that a man who documents a decline he has arranged is not following instructions. He is keeping a record for the person who gave them. He named Ko as the one who gave them. He did not name No because Ko was careful about that, which was the first genuinely intelligent thing I ever saw Chan Woo Ko do, and it came about 2 years too late to save him. They took the crown on the 17th of October, and it had nothing to do with any of that, which is the part that I still find funny. The organization doesn't care about a stopped prescription in a company clinic. What an international pageant cares about, existentially, is the biography. Yesol's official story had 4 load-bearing beams, raised by a grandmother in Jecheon, mother deceased, worked in a factory at 17 to pay for her own education, founded a foundation for orphan trainees which had, at the time of her crowning, distributed 460 million won. Her mother is alive. She lives in Jecheon, 11 minutes from the grandmother, and has done for 20 years, and stopped answering her daughter's phone calls in 2016 for reasons that are her own business and which I will not put in this. She was paid 4 million won a month starting in 2021 to have no comment about anything, out of the foundation. The factory job existed. It was 11 days. And the foundation, of the 460 million won it raised, had distributed 31 million to actual trainees and paid the rest to a consultancy that shared a registered address with no lines. Property arm? Here's the part that matters, and it's the reason I've told you all of it in this order. I wrote that biography, not the numbers, the words. In 2019, in a hotel room in Gwangju before a regional final, at 2 in the morning, on a laptop with a broken e-key, because the agency's PR team had produced 2 paragraphs that read like a hostage note, and she was crying, and I fixed it, the way I fixed everything, and I chose the phrase raised by her grandmother's hands because it's scanned when read aloud, and it has been in every profile of her in 6 countries ever since. I know it's fabricated because I fabricated the shape of it. I knew her mother was alive because I drove her to Jecheon in 2018 and sat in the car for 2 hours. For 7 years, I was the reason that story held. Every time a journalist got close, I was the one who reframed it. I coached her through the follow-up questions. I built the ramp. So in September, I did not attack her. I want that on the record, because people assume I did, and it's the one thing I'd like to be exact about. I stopped holding it up. The pageant's compliance office wrote to me on the 4th of September as a former employee of record, as they wrote to about 40 people, a standard letter with a reference number, asking whether I had any information relevant to the accuracy of the title holder's submitted biography. For 7 years, the answer to that letter was a phone call and a smoothing over. This time I answered it. 4 pages, my own drafts with the file dates on them, the 2019 hotel version with the broken e-key, the name of the town, and the fact that a woman lives in it. No adjectives, no story, no interview, no camera. A former employee of record replying to a reference number. They took 11 days to verify the mother, which is 10 more days than it should have taken anyone at any point in the last 6 years, and then it moved very fast. The title went on the 17th of October at 4 p.m. Korean time, in a statement of 2 sentences. The runner-up, a 24-year-old from Mexico City who had spent 3 weeks being described in our press as gracious, was crowned in a room with 11 people in it, and by all accounts, said something very kind about her predecessor, which is the correct thing to say and cost her nothing. Sponsors went the same afternoon. Cosmetics first. They always go first. The airline, the phone brand, the department store. 11 magazine covers came off the wall on the 9th floor, and I'm told they left the nails in. She called me at 4:41 p.m. I was in the basement in Nowon with a 15-year-old called Bo Ram, whose parents had scraped up 2 months of lessons and who had spent all of that afternoon's hour so far being terrified of taking up air. Exactly the way another 19-year-old had been in this same building in 2017. The phone buzzed on the piano, her name came up. I turned it face down, which is a thing I learned from her. Sunbae? It's nothing. Again from the top. And don't apologize for the note this time. You're allowed to be loud. They're paying for the room. It buzzed 9 more times in the next hour. I want to describe what I felt, and the honest answer is, I was working. That's it. That's the whole feeling. There was a kid in front of me with 2 months of lessons her mother had paid for in cash, and a phone on a piano, and the phone was the less interesting object in the room. That's when I knew it was actually over. Not on the stage in March, not in the corridor in Uido, in a basement in Noan, at 10 to 5 in the afternoon, when the most famous woman in the country called me 11 times and I finished the lesson. 3 days later, I sent one letter, not to a newspaper, not to a lawyer with a website and a podcast, to the company secretary of No Line Entertainment, by registered post, copied to the board, and to the acquiring party's counsel, because a company secretary is legally obliged to do something with what lands on his desk, and everybody else in that building is only obliged to have feelings. 2 pages. A notarized copy of an undertaking dated the 11th of March 1994. A notarized copy of page 61 of an impression ledger showing the same seal set, the same date, the same client, and the word unpaid. A certificate of deposit for 9 original ledgers, sealed, held at a notary's office in Noan since the 8th of July. And a request, under the company's own articles, that the holder of a 12% undertaking be given notice of the extraordinary general meeting scheduled for the 11th of November. Nothing about Yasol, nothing about capsules or laundry tickets or a stage in Sangam. That was all somebody else's file by then. A tax investigator's, a compliance office's, a judge's. This was just an old bill. I posted it at the counter, paid $1,901 for the tracking, and walked back past the corner unit where Haas Press was running, and the lease on that unit came up for renewal on the 11th of November, which is a date I have mentioned before and will mention again. What happened on the 9th floor when it arrived, I got later in pieces from Mrs. Jang, who was working out her notice and had stopped caring about anything. Byung-ho No read it standing up at the head of the table and then sat down and then asked for the room. Then he asked for a magnifying glass, which nobody in that building could produce. So a runner went out to a stationer's on the corner and came back with a plastic one for 4,001. He sat under that lamp for a long time, with the photocopy of a 1994 impression and my grandfather's mark in the corner of it. A square, 4 characters, a border of interlocking hooks, and Mrs. Jang, who brought him coffee he didn't drink, said the old man's hands were doing something odd. He'd seen that mark before, obviously. It's on every seal his company has used for 31 years in the corner, where nobody looks. He'd been stamping it onto contracts twice a week since 1994, without once thinking about the man who cut it, which is not a metaphor, it's just what people are like. But he'd seen it somewhere else too, and it took him until about 8 that evening to place it. And when he placed it, he called his secretary back in and asked her one question. The trainer, from the dorm, the one on television, Bei Woo Jin. He has a tattoo. On the arm. No took his glasses off. What is it of? Chan Woo Ko was arrested on the 29th of October at his mother's apartment in Bundang at 7 in the morning. And the thing that took him wasn't the capsules, it was VAT. I'd like to put that on a wall somewhere. A man arranges for 4 people to be quietly disassembled over 10 years. And what actually puts him in a van at 7 in the morning is 40% uplift on stage billed invoices across 6 fiscal years. Because the tax office has a department for that, and it never gets tired, and it does not require anybody to be brave. He'd been under investigation since Quack's complaint in May. What he did between May and October is the part I still enjoy. He talked to the 2 contractors who'd been in on it, on the phone, at length. He talked to a producer he thought was a friend. He talked to a lawyer he then didn't pay, which is the single most expensive economy available to a man in this country. And once Kobayashi's due diligence started sending polite letters in June, he began, in the manner of a man bailing a boat with a shoe, to move things a car into his brother-in-law's name, a deposit out of his wife's account, a lease surrendered early. Every one of those moves is a document. Every document has a date. He spent 5 months building the timeline of his own guilt, at roughly 2 entries a week, and I did not have to touch a single one of them. I said in February that you don't fight a man like Ko. You give him room, time, and one slightly wrong piece of information. Slightly wrong piece of information was this. In July, through a person who owed Quack money and did not owe me anything, Ko came to believe that the recording had come from inside the dorm staff group chat from one of the night staff, and that the night staff member had gone to the broadcaster's compliance office. So Ko, being quick, went and dealt with that. He called the night staff member's supervisor. He called the compliance office himself to get ahead of it, and gave them a version of the tour accounts that he had to then keep consistent with, which he could not do, because it wasn't true. He built the scaffold, he climbed it, he kicked it out. The charges, when they came, were tax evasion, embezzlement, and after you folded in September, conspiracy to cause bodily harm, which is a phrase that does no justice at all to what a decade of sugar in a heart patient's bottle actually is, but it's the phrase the law has. His wife filed in November. His lawyer withdrew. The red car he'd leased for more than my annual salary was collected from the garage by 2 men with a flatbed. And I know that because somebody in that building filmed it and it went round in 9 minutes. I didn't watch the arrest. I found out from a push notification at 8:20 in the morning while I was buying a coffee at the shop under the station, and the woman behind the counter was watching it on her phone, and she turned it round to show me because it was the interesting thing that had happened that morning. "That's the one from the agency," she said. "The Miss Universe one." "Yeah, they're all rotten," she said, "the whole lot of them," and gave me my change. Byung-ho No came to Nawan on the 3rd of November, alone, in a taxi. That's the part nobody believes. 61 years old. A company with his name on the roof, and he came to a basement rehearsal room in Noan in a taxi at 4 in the afternoon. And he waited 20 minutes in the corridor because I was in a lesson, and he didn't send anybody in to get me. I came out at 3:30, and there he was on a plastic chair between a fire extinguisher and a rack of chairs, in a good coat, holding a paper bag from a Jekkinen fruit shop. He did the 3 things in order. They always do them in order. First was the threat, and it was so old and tired that I think he was embarrassed by it. A 1994 undertaking, handwritten, unregistered from a man dead 11 years. 15 years of statute. No allotment ever made under it. He had a firm on retainer that could keep this in court until I was 50 and bankrupt. And did I understand what that would cost? And had I thought about what happens to a man with no money and a lawsuit? Yes, I said. I've thought about it a lot, actually. It's most of what I think about. That went badly for him, because the threat only works on a man who hasn't done the arithmetic. Second was the money. He'd brought a figure rather than a check, which I respected. 2 billion won paid over 4 years in exchange for surrender of the undertaking in the deposited ledgers, plus a consultancy title that meant nothing and an NDA that meant everything. 2 billion. I want to be exact about my own reaction, because I've read enough of these stories to know what I'm supposed to have felt, which is contempt. What I felt was that it was a lot of money. I had 840,000 won in the bank on the 3rd of November. I was 30 years old, living over a laundry, teaching in the building where the whole thing started, with knees that hurt on the stairs. 2 billion won is a flat, and a room in Mappo with a proper piano, and 40 years of not being frightened. I stood in that corridor and thought about it for 11 seconds. I counted them because I count things now. Then I said no, and the reason I said no isn't noble, so here it is. 2 billion won for the undertaking is a purchase. 12% of a company is a chair. A man with 2 billion won can be sued back down to nothing over 15 years by a firm on retainer. A man in the chair gets notified of the meetings. Third was the other thing, and this is where it got strange. He sat back down on the plastic chair and put the fruit bag on the floor and said, "Your grandfather was like a brother to me. I let that sit in the corridor for a while. He cut 3 seals for you in March 1994, I said. You couldn't pay. He took a piece of paper instead. He wrote unpaid in his book, and he never wrote anything else next to it for 11 more years. He never asked me. No, he didn't. Not once. 31 years. No's hands were on his knees. I thought every year, this year he'll come. He never came. After a while, you stop expecting it. After a while, you almost forget you didn't forget it. You just stopped paying it. Those are different. I pushed my left sleeve up. Do you want to see it? Didn't say anything, so I put my forearm out under the corridor light, wrist to elbow mirrored. The square, the 4 characters, the border of interlocking hooks. An old man looked at a tattoo on a stranger's arm in a corridor in Nawan, and put his hand over his mouth exactly the way Ko had put his hand over his mouth in a garage in January, looking at a scratch on a car. He never registered that mark, No said. Eventually. He said a mark any fool can read isn't protecting anything. He said that to me. In the shop. No laughed once with no pleasure in it whatsoever. 1994. I was sitting on a stool and he said it to me while he was cutting my company's face. He picked up the fruit bag and put it on the chair next to him and didn't offer it to me and didn't take it with him. And it sat in that corridor for 2 days until a cleaner threw it out. At the door he turned round and he asked the only question in this entire story that I have never been able to answer to anybody's satisfaction, including my own. If I had paid it in 1996, he said, would she have ever met you? The extraordinary general meeting was held on the 11th of November at 10 in the morning in the glass room on the 9th floor, which is a room I had walked past 11,000 times with a rail of jackets. 21 people. Board, major shareholders, Kobayashi's counsel in the corner with 2 associates, the company secretary, a notary, and me, in the only suit I own, which is the gray one from Sangam, with the sleeves adjusted by a 68-year-old man who refused to charge me. The first item was the undertaking, and it took 50 minutes and was the most boring event of my adult life. The notary's expert compared the 1994 corporate seal impression to the registered specimen on file, which took 4 minutes and was never in dispute. Then he came to the carver's mark, And this is the part I'd been building toward since a night in July on a floor above a laundry. And it consisted of a man in his 60s with a loop and a camera rig, photographing 9 hardbound ledgers, page by page, on a conference table for 31 minutes while everyone in the room checked their phones. The mark appears 4,118 times in those ledgers, from 1971 to 2013. Same tool, same hand, aging at a rate you can chart. You cannot fake that. Nobody has ever faked 42 years of consistent wear on a maker's mark. Because to do it, you would have to be a seal carver who worked for 42 years, and if you were, you'd have better things to do. Then he asked me to put my arm on the table. He photographed it under the same rig, at the same scale. He reversed the image, because a tattoo taken off a photograph of an impression is the impression's mirror, and a seal's face is a mirror too. So the tattoo reads the same way the tool does, not the way the paper does, which the notary explained to the room in a voice that suggested he'd been waiting his entire career for a document like this and intended to enjoy it. 911% match on the border hooks. The lower left character has a flaw where the tool slipped in about 1988 and my grandfather never recut it. And that flaw is on the 1994 impression, and on my arm and in every ledger page after March 1988, and in exactly no other object in the world. The notary said, "The mark is genuine, and the signatory is identified." Kobayashi's counsel in the corner wrote one line and underlined it. The board voted to settle rather than to litigate, 17-2 with 2 abstentions, because litigating would have meant 9 ledgers going into evidence in a public court in the same season that 4 medical files were already going into a different one. And because a distribution acquisition worth 90 billion won was hanging on the words "no material, undisclosed liabilities." 12% issued out of Treasury, notified, registered, done. Item 1 closed at 10:51. I'd like to tell you what that felt like. Here's what it actually was. The company's secretary slid a form across the table, and I signed my name. Both characters correctly with a steady hand. And somebody at the far end of the table said, "Can we get the blind down? There's a glare." Item 2 was the acquisition. I abstained because I'd been in the room for 51 minutes and had no idea what I was doing. Item 3 was a resolution, put by Kobayashi's counsel for an independent audit of the company's medical, welfare, and clinic accounts from 2014 to date, with the findings to go to the board and to the prosecutor's office. I voted for it. 17 others voted for it. That's it. That's my great act of revenge in the room, where they finally had to let me sit. I raised my hand with everybody else. Item 4 was property, and this is the only thing I actually came for. No Line's property arm held the freehold on the corner block on our street, and Lot 3, a unit of 41 square meters, currently let to a dry cleaner, lease expiring November 11th, was scheduled for consolidation into a redevelopment parcel. The paper had been drawn up in September. On the 12th, the tenant would have received notice. I asked for Lot 3 to be carved out and the lease renewed for 15 years at the current rent. And I said I'd take it out of my own entitlement if anyone wanted to argue about it. Nobody argued about it. Do you know why? Because it's a 41 square meter laundry, and there were 21 people in that room, and the smallest number any of them had said out loud that morning was in the millions, and a laundry is beneath the dignity of a meeting like that. That's the entire lesson of my second life, and I'm not going to explain it any further than that. At 11:20, they moved to a briefing on the 4th quarter release schedule, and I stood up, and the chair looked at me and said, "Mr. Bay, we have 6 more items." "You do," I said, and picked up my folder and left. 21 people watched me walk out of a meeting I had spent 9 months, and everything I owned getting into, and not one of them understood it, and I got in the service lift, out of habit, and rode down with a rack of costumes going to storage. She was waiting outside the building at ground level past the barrier, on the public side of it, in the rain. Not dramatic rain. November drizzle, the kind that doesn't commit, that gets into a coat over 40 minutes instead of soaking you in one go. She'd been there most of them. No car, no driver, no manager, no umbrella. And I understood that last one was a choice about 3 seconds after I saw her. Because Lim Yesul has never once in her life failed to check the weather. She had a baseball cap on and a mask down under her chin, which is the outfit that means "please recognize me quietly." "They said you were upstairs," she said. I was. For an hour and a half. 51 minutes, then I left. The security guard by the barrier was watching us with his hands behind his back. 4 months earlier, he'd watched Ko say goodbye to me at the same desk. That man has seen everything and will never tell anybody, which makes him the second most trustworthy person in this story. Her face was thinner. That's the true thing I noticed, and it's the one I'd rather not have. 3 weeks of it, the title, the sponsors, the mother injection on every channel, the foundation, the words used about her by people who had never met her, which were worse than anything I'd have chosen. "Can we go somewhere?" she said. "Anywhere. Not a cafe, your place." "No, Woojin. It's a room with a hot plate over a laundry, and you'd be photographed going in. I don't care about that anymore. You will. She laughed, and it broke in the middle, and she got it back. You know what the worst part is? She wiped her cheek with the back of her wrist, and the rain made that pointless, and she did it again. It's not the crown. Nobody's ever asked me a single thing about myself that wasn't the crown. It's that they're all saying I'm a liar about my mother, and I never once said it. Not once in 6 years. I never said the word. It was in the profile, and I just let it stand. Yes, I know, I said. I wrote it. She stopped. Not the theater stop, the one she does when she's about to reset. The other one, where a person's face goes still because they've been handed the actual shape of the last 6 years of their life in one sentence, and they have to hold it. 2 in the morning in a hotel in Gwangju, I said. The laptop with the broken E. You'd been crying because the PR draft read like a hostage note. I wrote raised by her grandmother's hands because it scans when you say it out loud. It's a good line. It's been in every profile in 6 countries because it's a good line, and I chose the word hands. Then why? Because in September they wrote to me with a reference number and asked, and I answered. I put my hands in my pockets. That's all I did, Yisol. I stopped. She took out her phone with wet fingers, and it took her 3 tries to open it, and she held it up, and it was The Roof in No On, 2017. The tar in the coffee can, and a 19-year-old with her hair scraped back and no face on yet. You were there, she said. I was. Then be there. Her voice went low and fast, the way it goes when she's actually inside herself. I'll do it properly. All of it, the whole thing, from nothing. And I don't need any of them. I need one person who I'll pay you back. Everyone. I know about the workshop. I know what you sold. I found out in. She stopped. I found out. When? She didn't answer. When did you find out? 2021. Very quiet. Your cousin told me at the funeral thing. The memorial? 4 years. She'd known for 4 years while I was teaching breath control to 17-year-olds for 2.4 million won a month. And she'd said nothing, because saying something would have meant owing something, and she had a schedule. I didn't feel anything about it, and I want to stop pretending that's strength. Something in me stopped being able to produce a reaction to that woman somewhere around bed 19, and it hasn't come back, and I don't think it's coming back, and there are worse ways to lose a limb. 7 years, she said. 7 years, Appa. Doesn't that mean anything? 8, I said. What? You said 7. It was 8. 2017 to 2025. I put the umbrella into her hand. I'd been holding it the whole time. A 4001 transparent one from the shop under the station, and closed her fingers around the handle because she wasn't taking it. That's what I mean. You've been getting it wrong for years, and I never corrected you once, because correcting you was never worth what it cost. That's the entire thing. That's what it was. Then I let go of her hand and walked to the crossing. She said my name once, behind me, in the rain, not loudly. I got the green man, and I crossed. I did not look back. And not because I'm hard about it. I looked back for 8 years. I have looked at that woman across a car park, across a green room, across a stage, across a hospital corridor from a bed, and I have run out of ways to do it. The last thing I heard from Lim Ye Sol was 3 weeks later in December, a message that said, I hope you know I did love you, which arrived at 2:14 in the morning, and which I have never answered and never deleted. That's the loose one. I'm allowed to have one. There's one more room I have to put you in, and then I'm done. On the 24th of November, I took the subway and then a bus to Onsan to meet a man called Kyung-Soo Yang, 49, who teaches dance 3 afternoons a week in a studio above a supermarket with a floor that used to be a badminton court. He'd asked to meet me, not the other way round. His lawyer passed it through Kobayashi's counsel, and there was a week of very careful people asking whether it was appropriate, and in the end, I just rang the number on the studio's poster, and he picked up. He met me at the bus stop, which nobody does anymore. And we walked the 400 meters to the supermarket slowly because that's the only speed he has. In 2016, Kyung-Soo Yang was the lead choreographer on 2 of No Line's biggest acts and was running a wage claim for 11 contract dancers who hadn't been paid for a promotional tour. In 2017, he started getting short of breath on stairs. By 2018, he couldn't demonstrate a full 8 count. In 2019, he had a pacemaker fitted at 43 years old and gave up choreography. And he spent the next 6 years believing that he had a bad heart and had been unlucky, and telling younger dancers to look after themselves because you never know. He'd found out what actually happened from a lawyer's phone call in September. We sat on plastic chairs in the corner of his studio while 11-year-olds did a routine to something with too much bass. And he didn't say anything for a while. And then he said, I stopped the wage claim in 2017. Did you know that? No. I stopped it because I was tired. He was watching the kids, not me. I thought I'm getting old. I can't fight this and work. I'll let it go. 11 dancers. I told them it wasn't worth it. 2 of them still don't speak to me. He rubbed his chest, the flat of his hand over where the unit sits, which I noticed he does about once a minute without knowing he's doing it. Turns out I wasn't tired. I was being made tired, on a schedule. There's a purchase order. 200 units, November 2016. 200. He laughed, and it turned into a cough, and he waved it off. That's 10 weeks. They ordered 10 weeks at a time, like a magazine subscription. That's the sentence I think about most out of this entire year, and I've thought about a lot of sentences. He asked me what mine was, and I told him 48 days, 1 bottle, never opened, a laundry safe. He said I was lucky, and I said I know. And he said, no, you don't. Not yet, you will in about 6 years. Then he asked me the thing he'd actually got me on a bus for. The interview, he said. The program. They want me to sit in a chair and be the one it happened to. He watched the kids for a bit. My wife says don't. She says once you do it, that's who you are for the rest of your life. The man with the heart, every time somebody meets me, it'll be the first thing they know. She's right. I know she's right. He looked at me for the first time. So tell me why I should do it anyway. I want to say I gave him something. A speech, a reason, a line. What I actually said was, because you ordered it 4 times in 10 years, and the 4th one got canceled in May because I got fired first. And if nobody sits in the chair, then there's a 5th one in about 18 months, and it's somebody who's 26 right now and doesn't know they're in this yet. He nodded slowly. That's a horrible reason, he said. It's the only one I've got. Everything else is your wife's argument, and she's right. He did it in October. I've already told you that part. Out of order, because that's the order I found things out in. 40 minutes in a plastic chair in this same studio with his hand where the pacemaker is. 11 million views inside a week, which is more than any act he ever choreographed. He is now, permanently, the man with the heart, exactly as his wife said. And he says he'd do it again. And I don't entirely believe him, and I don't think you have to. Before I left, he made me stand in the middle of the floor, and he watched me breathe for about 90 seconds, and then told me my right shoulder comes up when I inhale and has probably been doing it since I was a teenager, and that it's why my voice sits back in my throat when I'm tired. 8 years I taught breathing for a living. A man with a pacemaker fixed me in 90 seconds in a room over a supermarket. Anyway, I still do the exercise he gave me. Every morning, my shoulder still comes up. Misaki Hasegawa put the contract in front of me on the roof of the Kobayashi building in Yungu on the 2nd of December, between 2 flights, in a wind that made both of us hold our coffee with 2 hands. I'd asked why the roof. She'd said the meeting rooms were booked and she had 40 minutes, and she doesn't sit down when she's got less than an hour, which I've since learned is completely true and one of the more inconvenient facts about her. Vocal and artist development. Korea, she said. Reporting to me, you'd build a department. 12 people by the 2nd year, 6 now, and one of the 6 is your choice and I don't want to hear about it. You want me because I'm not owned by anyone in that building. I wanted you in March for that. That's not why anymore. She drank some coffee. In March, you were a man who'd burned 200 million won of my airtime. I've since watched you spend 9 months and everything you had to get into a room, and then leave it after 51 minutes. Item 4 was done. Yes, a laundry. She said it without any inflection at all, which from her is a shout. 21 people in that room, and the only thing you asked for personally was a 15-year lease on a dry cleaners. He's 68 and his knees are gone. I know. I read the file. I read every file. She turned the contract round so it faced me. That's the answer to why. I looked at the number on page 4 for slightly too long. It was more than my father ever earned in a year. It was in fact roughly 2.4 million won a month, multiplied by an amount that made me want to laugh in a way that would have been hard to explain. I need to say a thing first, I said. Say it. I'm not, and here I stalled on a roof at 30 years old, which for a man who talks for a living was humiliating. Whatever this is, I'm not able to do it properly. I've got about 40% of a person's normal working parts left and the rest of it's arithmetic. If you're waiting for me to say something in a lift, it isn't coming. Misaki Hasegawa looked out at the traffic on Sejongdero for about 4 seconds. I've decided already, she said. That's not... I decided in July, in a laundry, at 1 in the morning, when you didn't take 41 million won. She capped her pen. I'm not asking you for anything, so there's nothing for you to fail at. When you catch up, tell me. If you don't, I'll have made a decision and lived with it, which I do professionally about 11 times a day. That's insane. It's efficient. She checked her watch. I have a flight. Sign page 4 and initial 6. Misaki. That's the first time you've used my name. She picked up her cup and started walking to the stairwell door. Don't do it again in the office. It'll be strange for the department. That's it. That's the whole scene. On a roof, in the wind, in December, with a contract and 2 paper cups. And she left first, and I stood there and laughed out loud like an idiot in front of the air conditioning units. Duk-soo Ha shut the shop in April, 5 months after I got him a 15-year lease. I want to be honest about that because it's the part that didn't go the way I'd built it. He'd been standing at that board 12 hours a night since 1994, and his knees were finished, and his son in Daejeon had a second bedroom and a granddaughter who was 3. And one Tuesday he told me over pork bone soup that a man should get to stop while stopping is still his own idea. I said something about the lease. He said the lease was the best thing anybody had ever done for him, and that it was also, and I quote, a 15-year sentence for a 68-year-old man's knees, you idiot. So we sublet it to a woman called Mrs. Bach, who'd been pressing shirts in a basement in Silham for 19 years for somebody else, at the same rent on the same 15 years. Ha spent 3 days teaching her the ledger, number, item, time in, name, time out, no gaps, no pencil, 7 years of counterfoils, tax, and because people lie. The 9 impression ledgers came out of the notary's vault and went to Daejeon with him, because I asked him to keep them, and because a man who has kept records his whole life should have something to look after. He rings on Sundays. He complains about the broth down there. His granddaughter can now sing 4 bars of an old trot song in Giola vowels, badly, which is entirely my fault. We're a year on now. Yisol's mother gave one interview and then moved, and nobody has found her, and good. No Line is a subsidiary with a different name on the building. Byung-ho No resigned in March with a statement about the health of the company, and I have not spoken to him since a corridor in Nawon, and there is a question of his I still haven't answered. I've decided that not answering it is the answer. Ha-eun released a single in June with her vowels exactly where they should be. It did well enough. She sent me a screenshot at 3 a.m. with 9 exclamation marks, which is how I know nothing important about her has changed. I run a department of 9. 4 of them came out of trainee lines that cut them for the wrong reasons, which was not a policy. It just kept happening, and my hands still shake sometimes. Not the tremor. That was never mine. That was a purchase order from a compounding pharmacy in Bucheon. This is just the ordinary thing that happens to a man who spent 9 months waiting for a date on a calendar, and it comes at about 3 in the morning. And I sit up in the dark like someone who's forgotten something, and it passes. Misaki has never once asked about it. She just gets up and puts the kettle on and stands in the kitchen in Fukuoka with her arms folded looking out at the car park until I stop. That's where we are on Sundays. Her mother's place is 20 minutes from the port, and there's a room upstairs with a bad piano in it. And 2 cups on the counter, one of which says Busan Marine Supply on it because I stole it from a laundry, and I have never once been forgiven for that. She picked up the book I'd left face down on the table last week, and the bookmark fell out of it, and she caught it and turned it over. A dry cleaning counterfoil. Ticket 2011-147, suit jacket, navy, single stain right cuff. In 340. You're using evidence as a bookmark, she said. It's a copy. The book's in Daejeon. That isn't better. She held it up between 2 fingers. Why do you keep it? Because a man wrote a number in a ledger at 20 to 4 in the morning for no reason at all, and 11 years of my life came apart on it. I didn't say that. I took it out of her hand, put it back in the book at page 200 and something, and said, it's the right size.